Paula, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, great to be here, Mike. Thank you so much for having me.
Can you tell me a little bit about your role at Google Cloud?
Yeah, so first off, Mike, I can't fix your Gmail issues. So let's just lay that out there off the bat, right? I think that was the first thing my father asked me if I could help him fix those issues when I joined Google.
I helped my dad with his, so yeah, I get
that's
it.
usually what happens, right? That's the way it goes. But what I focus on at Google Cloud is you think through all the great technology that is underpinning the things like Gmail and YouTube and Maps. All of that technology is at the core of Google Cloud, where we're taking that same baseline and enabling it and offering it to enterprises to drive their businesses. So I get the great pleasure of working with organizations across the globe, across industries, to use that very technology, but focus it on solving problems that are supply chain related. Mm-hmm. So it's a fun mixture of supply chain and technology.
That's awesome. So what is Google doing in supply chain, and how are they using the power of Google Cloud?
Yeah. Well, two things. First off, think broader Google. Broader Google has supply chain, right? We have our data centers, we have our devices and services. So one side of our business is actually operating supply chains. On the other side of the business, it's what technology can we create that are going to help to power not only Google's supply chain, but also many other organizations. So it's really identifying a path of leveraging data, AI and ML on a scalable platform to enable those very use cases. So think of it differently. We're not an applications company. We're not building the next demand planning application, for example. But we have great technology that if we point it towards a supply chain problem, that's something interesting, right? That's something to be able to solve a problem in maybe a slightly different perspective than what we might have today.
That's great. You were talking about the capabilities that we all know Google for as consumers. It's data, user experience, and a lot of AI capabilities. So how are these being used to improve the supply chain for our customers of yours?
Yeah, I think it's what becomes interesting is you and I are consumers, right? And we're drawn towards the here and now, right? Whether that's pulling out your phone and you have something immediately at your fingertips, or it's ordering a product and it shows up at your doorstep, right? It's all kind of that experience of getting things when you want them, how you want them, and under the user experience of simplicity that we're used to. The fact of the matter is, if you look at that through the lens of an enterprise, all of us as supply chain professionals don't have that same approach, right? We don't have that same type of experience. So the mindset of utilizing and driving supply chain excellence in day-to-day tasks that we are all used to in the consumer world has the underpinning to enable that into the enterprise space as well. So think of it really as taking the same mentality that we have in building consumer applications and applying it into an enterprise environment as well. Now, of course, we get the same type of thing as we couple it with data and we couple it with AI and ML technologies, the same things that are powering recommendations, for example, in some of the other tools and technologies on the consumer side.
That's great. The executives you work with, are they in a good position with the data that they have? I imagine there's kind of this runs the gamut of digitally advanced and some digital laggards that you're seeing out there.
Totally, and it's a journey, right? There's not this great end result. You don't have a finish line of, okay, here, I'm done. I collected all my data.
Yes.
So you definitely see organizations at different levels of that level of maturity. One of the things that we always talk about is how do you create a supply chain digital platform? How do you create that digital twin of a supply chain? And the first thing is, okay, great. I need to gather together all the data that I could be using to drive my supply chain. That could be private data that you have internally within your own four walls. It can be community data that ties to the trading partners that you operate with, your suppliers, your customers, your logistics providers. And it could tie into public data, right? Information about supply chain risks and climate issues that could impact your supply chain. And the first thing that someone says is, oh my gosh, that'll take me forever. How do I pull that all together, right? So I think one of the recommendations is focus on it by use case. I want to drive a particular use case, and then what data do I need to solve that particular use case? And then you grow from there. So everyone's at very different stages of securing that data, of finding out how to incorporate it and utilize it, but start small and then expand.
Cool. Can we dive into one of those use cases? We'd love to hear about a real world example.
Sure. I mean, a prime example is even if you take it upstream into demand forecasting. Very, we're all doing demand forecasting. It's not new. We've been doing it forever.
Yes.
Right? And a lot of times if we just focus on, okay, the past is going to predict the future, we clearly know over the past few years that that's not the case, right? Right.
Yes.
There are disruptions that come into all of that, and consumers are changing their minds, right? We're all very fickle, right?
Yes.
We kind of jump back and forth. So if I want to think about data that I would use internally, I'm going to take past historical sales. I'm going to take past inventory information. I'm going to take seasonality trends. I'm going to look at market basket analysis of halo and cannibalization effects. That's all great. But what if now I can fold in consumer search trends, things that are going to be more forward-looking? Will that give me information to help me identify what the true near-term demand forecast might be? Right? Who's searching on what things? We think about Google search trends. How cool would it be to be able to understand who's searching on what at an aggregate level, not just for a marketing purpose, but to pull that back into a supply chain-related decision-making process like demand forecasting. So just simple things like that start to tie things together.
No, that's great. That's also stuff we're looking at in our TikTok supply chain research,
Yes.
Connecting more of that demand chain element into supply chain and planning especially too. So I personally use Google Trends a lot for research.
That's great.
Big fan.
It's a little addicting, isn't it?
Oh
It
gosh,
is.
you literally just want to check everything once you know that you can see what everyone else is searching on.
Yes.
AI must also enable you to also have some more unstructured data, or not spending as much time on cleaning up the data that goes in, which is also probably really exciting for a lot of folks too.
Well, and I think a key point there is, I think as humans, we assume that we understand the connectivity between data sets. And sometimes we're right about that, sometimes we're completely wrong. And that's where the power of the machine, allowing the machine to help identify where trends are, ones that we might not have even thought about of connectivity of data. So that makes it a lot of fun.
Very cool. I know at our Google Day Zero event, you gave an example of a pair of khakis
Yes.
and the data going into that. I'm not wearing my khakis today, wearing some
No.
suit pants, but I love that example. I'm wondering if that would be a good story to share.
Yeah, well, I think another example, so we could take, maybe you want to order a pair of khakis, right?
Yes.
What does it take to actually get those khakis to your doorstep? The starting point of that is that demand forecast, right? So I think that point about Google search trends, how do we utilize those types of data to even do the forecasting up front? But if we now take that further down the path, how do we ensure manufacturing quality, as an example, during the manufacturing process? Because the amount of returns that happen due to faulty manufacturing or some type of defects is actually quite large. So where can we now inject aspects of AI and machine learning even into that part of the process? And now think about using AI not in terms of just the example of demand forecasting, but now apply it into a visual inspection process, right? Let me train models to identify defects in those khaki pants, right? Where I can now identify proactively that there is a stain or a broken zipper or a tear, and pull those things out before they even reach your doorstep when you finally have that pair of khakis. So AI can be applicable across so many dimensions of the end-to-end supply chain, and those are just a few examples.
That's great. I'd love to talk a little bit about your professional career.
Yeah.
What brought you into supply chain?
It's funny. I will say we talk a little bit about a family fun event, if you will. But I swear my DNA's in our family supply chain. It's kind of scary to tell you the truth. But I graduated from Penn State University with a degree in supply chain. Back then it was called business logistics. But I remember actually sitting in, those introductory classes that you take. You want to be in business, you don't know what, so you take the intro to accounting and finance and marketing, and of course, supply chain or business logistics is one of those. And I tell you, I sat in the accounting classes and the finance, and I knew very quickly what I did not want to do in business, right? My brain just, I don't know, I couldn't wrap my head around those. But I sat in this intro to supply chain class, and it's like a light bulb went off, and I went, oh my gosh, I get it. This makes sense. And I kind of got invigorated by it. Maybe it was a little bit newer back then, but it was kind of fun. Now, I mentioned it's a little bit of a family affair. I might have been following in the footsteps of my older sister, who is also a Penn State grad in supply chain, my brother-in-law, who is a Penn State supply chain graduate, and then even my brother. So we all like to have, we start talking supply chain at the holiday dinner table. It's kind of scary, but fun nonetheless.
And you said at times, are you guys working at like the same companies or competing
yeah,
companies?
It's kind of funny. So we've all been in the intersection of supply chain and technology, more around enterprise supply chain software. At one time, all four of us worked for the same company, and at other times we all worked for competitors where then I wasn't allowed to invite them to the holiday dinner table anymore.
Gotcha.
So, you got to watch that.
Yeah, some NDAs pass out at a Thanksgiving
exactly.
dinner for, some
Exactly.
verboten
Sign
topics.
your NDA before you come in for a
Yes.
holiday dinner, yes.
That's great. And what are you passionate about in supply chain? What are the problems out there that are exciting for you to solve and be investigating?
It's real world. Mike, what's so funny is for all of us who have been in the supply chain space for decades, I bet you people listening can probably relate to this, but between the pandemic and everything going on with COVID-19 and the rise of supply chain disruptions, this is the first time in my career that I don't have to explain what I do. People get it now.
Yes.
And, I'm the one taking the picture of the placards in the grocery store saying due to supply chain disruptions, and I'm just laughing, right? Because now everybody talks about
Yes.
it. So when you look at it in that capacity, being in supply chain, you're impacting everything. You're impacting everybody. You're impacting you and I as consumers to get food off the grocery store shelf. You're impacting everything from medicines and food to be distributed. You're handling the logistics of moving everything across a global supply chain. How much more invigorating can it be
Yeah.
to be people who are underpinning the movement of the entire global economy? It's exciting. It's really exciting.
We are looking at the talent in supply chain, and a major element of that is getting more women into supply chain and leadership positions. So I think that was a great pitch to encourage more women to explore the academics and professional career.
Yeah. Well, I can always just speak from my own personal direction, is I think I've always had a drive to take action on things, to make things happen, right? And of course, the supply chain area is, things are always happening, right? You're never a dull moment. When you look at it in terms of how can you grow and evolve, one thing I always like to tell people is when I go back to my alma mater and I like to speak to students, and it's a way for me to remain connected with the next generation of supply chain professionals coming in. And one of the questions I always get is, how did you determine where you wanted to go, right? How did you choose that path?
Yep.
And I look at it in twofold. One, people in supply chain think that always going into industry is the path, right? I'm going to be a procurement analyst. I'm going to be a site manager. I am going to be a logistics analyst, right? I'm going to be a demand planner. That's all great, but another direction you can go, and now I'll plug in the technology space, is how do I stay in technology with a supply chain slant? And that's the path that I took, is it allows me the opportunity to stay very connected to what's going on in the world of technology, but turn it towards a supply chain problem. So I think there's a lot of different opportunities for everybody, including women, to go into the direction of not only supply chain, but technology of supply chain, and furthermore, leadership across both of those horizons.
That's great. I love that answer. A lot of our themes here at 0100 are about that intersection of digitization and supply chain.
Exactly.
How we use that to move forward. People in the 0100 community are investigating a lot of where those boundaries between supply chain and IT that may have existed before that are now being blurred, or maybe someone's breaking through the wall. So again, like your answer just kind of excites me about that mission that we have and what people are working on.
Well,
so.
Mike, I love that point, because I think if you look historically and you talk about the role between technology and the business side, or the dichotomy between, okay, this is on the tech side, the IT folks, and these are on the business folks, right?
Yes.
And there's always this layer of who can help to translate between the two. And I love your point of, it's not just blurring, you're almost breaking down walls where those two are becoming so intertwined. Talking about technology to solve a business problem, it's not a separate conversation anymore. Right. It's not that, someone chooses technology and the business people deal with it, or the business people direct what's going on and technology selects it. It's honestly becoming such an integrated discussion. And the fun part about it is, if you're on the business side, you're learning and driving things a little bit more into the technical side. And if you're on the technical side, you can't claim I don't know the business side.
Yep.
It's all blurred together. And that's what's exciting about the points that you're raising about the types of topics we cover here.
This has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for joining me today and taking the time.
I really appreciate the time and the opportunity. Thank you so much, Mike.
That's it for today's episode of the 0100 podcast, Digitally Reinventing Supply Chain. See you next time.